Hi, and welcome back to Map the Maze. So this week, this is going to be a really tough one. So bear with me. Stress free for good. Their skill this week, it's not me making it up. I don't know if you can see that, but it's stop doing what doesn't work. There are lots of times when I'm working with clients and there will be a pattern of behavior or a pattern of communication that doesn't work, hasn't worked, and isn't working for them. But it is really hard to get out of that. And so people will repeat the pattern, whether it's of communication or behavior within the mediation in the joint session, and are then frustrated that it doesn't work. So often what we'll say to people is, well, if it didn't work during the marriage, it's not going to work when you're exiting the marriage. So this for me is a really important life skill that I would really suggest you give a go and think about. And the reason is that there are things that all of us do that are routine, that are habits, that are patterns for how we behave, particularly when we're talking about how we behave with other people that we're close to. And some of them are not helpful. Some of them are not helpful to us. Some of them are not helpful to the relationship as a whole. When people are separating and divorcing, it can be really important to try and shift the way that communication is happening and to shift behaviors. So I would suggest, tough as it is, this is a life skill that's really important for people who are separating and divorcing. So what do they say you need to do? So if you're faced with a difficult challenge, so now you're going into that joint session, you're preparing in advance, what they suggest you do is that, again, you shift your attention to your diaphragm, to your belly. You take a couple of deep breaths, 2 or 3 breaths. You think of someone that you love. So I'm guessing you weren't expecting that. That you think of somebody that you love that creates a sense of positivity and warmth, and you try and hold that in your body. They suggest trying to hold it around your heart. When that feels secure, that image, that sense of warmth, that sense of safety that comes from thinking about someone you love, then you start thinking about the situation and think about how you have handled this problem, this challenge, this issue, this conversation, the mediation maybe so far, and think, has it worked? Has my behavior, the way I've communicated, has it worked so far? And if the answer is no, then you just start thinking, what could I change? How could I change my behavior, my communication, what's happening in the room, my preparation, whatever it is? How could I change that to enable me to have more tools to be successful in the room? So this is a hard one, I appreciate, because for a lot of people, they're going to say, yes, that sounds great, but it's the other person. It's their behavior that is making it impossible for us to negotiate, or it's their behavior which is making it difficult for us to communicate. And that could be true. You could be right. Their behavior could be making it more difficult to negotiate or to communicate. But what I would say is you can't control them. At the end of the day, if you're separating, you have given up the idea that you have any power to control the other person. And actually, you're in a totally different dynamic. So for this dynamic, you now can't control them. The only option you have is yourself. And that what can happen is changing the way that you communicate, changing the way you behave in the mediation can be incredibly helpful, can be really powerful, can surprise the other person. I've definitely had mediations where people are expecting to come to the mediation joint session, that the other person will behave in a specific way that they're used to seeing when they're in relationship. And that sets up expectations. I've also seen people come to mediation and subvert those expectations that come, and maybe they're not overly emotional. Maybe they are very focused. Maybe they are willing to come up with ideas and counter proposals. It can be quite shocking for somebody. Um, I guess what I'm saying is be that person, subvert the expectation. Yeah. Don't just go with what they think they're going to see from you. If you can come in and be focused, prepared, calm, ready to negotiate, understanding your needs, able to listen, that can be an incredible benefit in a mediation where the other person maybe isn't in control of how they're behaving, isn't present in the moment. So definitely you can't stop other people from behaving in ways that you don't like, but you can always think about, is there something I could change? So it's kind of a long story, but let me just jump into it anyway. Um, so I used to work on a trading floor. I used to have a quasi kind of gatekeeping function in relation to some sales traders who, if you don't know, can be quite, let's just say, assertive. And there was one that I was particularly struggling with. We had a really, as I now know, conflictual relationship. I went away and tried to learn some meditation techniques, although I have to say I was really bad at them, and was talking to the monk who was trying to teach me. And he said, what are you really struggling with at the moment? And before I kind of realized, I started talking about this one person that I found almost impossible to interact with in a way that just didn't feel hostile. And he said something so unexpected to me that I honestly will never forget it. He said, "How lucky you are. What a gift they are giving you." And I was, you can imagine, horrified by that answer. But what he said is, they are giving you the gift of knowing yourself, that in life, it is really difficult to understand yourself, to have self awareness, to gain knowledge about yourself. And this person is freely, generously teaching you about yourself, about what is important to you, about what is upsetting to you, about your boundaries. Um, and the monk's suggestion was that I go back and instead of interacting with this person, instead of responding with anger, which is generally my first choice, that I instead respond with gratitude. Really hard. And I have to say, it takes a lot of energy. So you can't do it with everybody, but if you have a problem, if you are separating, this is maybe the time to use that skill. So for a month, every time I interacted, he was exactly the same. I responded with gratitude. I was positive. I was calm. At the very least, I was neutral. I didn't escalate. So I took the boundary that he was triggering as knowledge and then responded in a way that was calm, neutral, and if I could manage it, and it became easier, positive. So at the end of a month of constant effort, I remember sitting in a meeting. There were a whole bunch of sales traders, and somebody said something totally par for the course, very normal, relatively disrespectful. This particular sales trader jumped in and said, "Don't speak like that to Sala." I was shocked. What had happened without me realizing it was that because I had changed the way I was behaving, responding, reacting to him, it changed our interaction. And not every story ends like this, but we actually ended up becoming friends. And I ended up becoming quite fond of him because um, we had changed. I had changed. He realized, he clocked it, he read the signals, he changed. He probably didn't even realize. And after that month, we were actually friendly and then over time became friends. So I guess what I would say is even the most difficult people, if you change the way you respond, it can change your interactions. Not that you are trying to make a better relationship with somebody that you're divorcing or separating from, although I would say as a co-parent, you do need to focus on that. But it can help make the mediation process easier for you. Yeah, none of this is about gifts for other people. This is about gifts for you. So have a think. See if this is something that you can think about. I appreciate it can be really difficult, that your pattern feels justified, it's right, it's the only choice, but it may not be. Okay, so give it a go, and I'll see you next time with the next life skill. Take care.